The top 10 ARs in Warzone Season 4 Reloaded. We finally are going to have a different meta with the NZ41 being nerfed. With the meta shift, we will be seeing old weapons make a comeback and a couple new ones that people aren't using. These will be the 10 best long-range assault rifles, and number 10 is the Grau. Good, hold, reliable. I've been seeing a bunch of clickbait videos about the Kilo being back. It's not. The Kilo is just a worse version of the Grau. Their recoil, movement, and damage are all very similar, but the Kilo is going to have 56 millisecond worse time to kill, making it pointless to use over this Grau. The Kilo still has a below average time to kill up close and at long range, but the Grau just does what the Kilo does, but better. A lower skill AR that people can beam with at long range. And then the attachments are going to be pretty basic. You probably already know what they are. Monolithic Suppressor, Tempest Archangel, that's going to get our bullet velocity and damage range up. Then the VLK, just to make it a little bit more accurate, gives us good zoom, 60 round mag for the damage per mag, and then Commando foregrip to make it as accurate as possible. And number 9 is the Fara. This gun got nerfed a while back, and it did make it a little bit worse, but it is still amazing. You get a 900 millisecond TTK at long range, which is going to be equivalent to some of the higher end assault rifles on this list. But the only reason it's down here is going to be for two factors. One, the damage per mag is a little bit low, and then number 2, if you hit stomach shots, it will lower your time to kill to 975 milliseconds, putting it around the Grau's level of TTK. But this one goes higher because we have a nice fire rate, making it super forgiving, and then the recoil is exclusively vertical, meaning you just have to pull back on your analog stick or mouse, and that is really easy to control. This weapon just gives you a little bit more potential than the Grau, which is why it's just above it. And we also got a nice range buff in this last update, making it have a better time to kill out to a little bit farther ranges. And now if we jump straight into the class setup, we're going with the Grau Suppressor and Spetsnaz RPK barrel, which this is going to get our damage range up even more, as well as getting us the max bullet velocity. Then we got the action alarms 3 times for a nice optic. Spetsnaz grip is going to get us more recoil control, and then the 60 round mag is just for the best damage per mag, which is still going to be a little bit low, so it's hard to use in quads, but trios and below, this thing will be amazing. And now for number 8, the Vargo. Not the new one, but the one from Cold War, the Vargo 52. And why is this one spot above the Fara? Well, actually it's going to have the same identical TTKs as the Fara. We're going to have the same damage and the same fire rate, but this one goes higher because it actually doesn't get the time to kill to lower if you hit stomach shots or even shots to your left pinky toe, because the damage stays consistent, making this thing more forgiving than the Fara, and that's why it goes one spot above. And then the issue is when we go with the 60 round mag, it actually hurts our aim down sight speed tremendously, so this thing's gonna have a little bit poor handling, but because of the time to kill being consistent and the recoil being low, it's still a great, easy to use weapon at long range. And we're gonna go straight into the attachments, which is gonna be identical to the Fara, where we got the Grau and Task Force, which are going to give us the max bullet velocity and increase our range. And then Spetsnaz grip, axial arms, that's going to be for accuracy. And then with the magazine, you could switch up to the 45 round mag if you're playing solos or even duos. But after that, you're going to have to use the 60 round mag to even stand a chance to not have to reload 80,000 times in the middle of a fight. But our aim down sight speed will be a little bit slow. Number 7 is going to be the M13. This is a gun that has always been good in Warzone, but people have just been recently coming back to using it. And with all the nerfs to the other weapons with recoil and TTK, this is actually getting better and better and moving up the list. This is one of the easiest ARs to use with absolutely no recoil. We still have a good time to kill at 938 milliseconds, which is going to be far better than the Grau, and we're also going to be just as accurate, and we're going to have a better fire rate, making it super forgiving. The only problem with this, like a lot of the other assault rifles, is going to be damage per mag, because this thing is a bit of a pea shooter. That's why it can be so accurate. It takes 15 bullets to knock someone at long range, and that is really its only con, and that's the only reason it isn't higher on the list. This is one of the best ARs on solos and duos, and you can get away with using it in trios, but quads, you're just going to be evaporating through ammo way too much. It's sort of the Mac 10 of assault rifles if I was going to compare it to something. And anyone who decides to use the Kilo over this is dumb. That's all I gotta say. We go to the attachments, we're gonna go with the Monolithic Suppressor, Tempest Marksman, that's gonna be the max bullet velocity, increase our range. Then we got the Commando foregrip, VLK optic, those are gonna help with the accuracy, 60 round mag, because that's the best we can do for damage per mag. I really suggest you try this gun again if you haven't recently, it's amazing. And number 6 is gonna be the Cooper Carbine. This is basically the M13, but just a little bit better because the time to kill is going to be about 50 milliseconds higher, and it's really basically the same weapon. It did get a little bit of recoil added to it recently because they nerfed some of the attachments for the recoil control, so it isn't going to be quite as accurate as the M13, but we're still going to have a great fire rate, making it super forgiving, and it's still going to be really easy to aim in my opinion. I think this is one of the best Fortune's Keep long-range ARs to use, and that's one of my personal favorites over there. And if we get into the attachments really quickly, we're still going to go with the basic setup of MX Silencer, Cooper Custom, and this 60 round drum, because that's going to get us our best bullet velocity, and that's what we need for our long-range weapons. And then one thing I want to point out is that this gun, the worst recoil is going to come on the initial firing recoil, which is why we're going to use brace instead of something like hard scope or tight grip, because this helps us with where the recoil hits us the hardest. And then from there, you're going to go pretty common, hatch grip, hand stop, lengthened, and then we got the Cooper 45W, which this just helps us with recoil and mounted crouch or prone and during sustained fire. And this thing is still going to beam pretty well. We are halfway through the video, and make sure to like it if you've seen clickbait videos about the Kilo being back, and subscribe for more top 10s, weapon comparisons, and just Warzone content in general to keep on top of the meta. Number 5 going to be the Volk. It got a really nice buff in Season 4 Reloaded, and the time to kill is just incredible. It's 888 milliseconds at long range and 666 up close, and that is without a recoil booster, without a barrel that increases the fire rate. We are only using the Gorenko 45 round mag. So the one problem with it, like a lot of these other assault rifles you've heard so far, is going to be damage per mag, and it's going to be the best in duos, but you can get away with it in trios. So you have to build it in a specific way to make the recoil manageable. Most of the problems are going to come with the initial firing recoil, so we're going to have to put a bunch of attachments towards that. But once you do, it's going to be an absolute beam with a great time to kill, and you're also going to have amazing mobility. That's one of the best aspects I can say about this weapon, is that you're going to be moving around like you have an SMG almost, but you're going to be able to shoot people out at 100, 120, 30, 40 meters. We have great bullet velocity still of over 1500 meters per second. We're going to have really manageable recoil when we build it out correctly. We're going to have a really good time to kill. There's really no cons about this weapon other than damage per mag. And then for this thing's attachments to make it amazing, we're going to go with the MX silencer, Crossing 428 barrel, 45 round Gorenko ammo, and lengthen to get the max bullet velocity. Then from there, how are we going to fix the recoil to make it really easy to use? Well, to begin with, we got to use this 1229 Slate 3.25 times custom optic. This is actually going to give us more recoil control than the SVT 3-6, as well as make it have less visual recoil. So that is a double benefit to this weapon. But the one thing I'd like to say is you got to change the reticle to this crosshair dot, because the first one is kind of gross. A perk that is actually really underutilized is Perfectionist. This actually is going to lower our recoil by 6%, which is a huge benefit. Then for initial firing recoil, we're going to use this Reisdorf 22V adjustable. This also gives us aim walking movement speed and walking steadiness, which is actually going to help us tremendously in long range and close range gunfights, which this thing can win both of them, and that's why it's so good, because of its versatility. And then from there, we also use the stippled grip type because it gives us recoil recovery and initial firing recoil, which is going to make this weapon perform so much better. And then we already have such good mobility, I can actually manage to use the Carver foregrip and lose a little bit of extra ADS speed over the hand stop, but I'm going to get about an extra 4% of vertical recoil control. Now, if you guys take one thing away from this video, it would be to try this weapon on Fortune's Keep, Caldera, Rebirth, whichever one you play in duos. It is so good and really underrated. And number 4 is the C58. I don't really see this weapon being used too much, and I don't know why. The one problem with it is going to be its close range time to kill is atrocious at 864, but the reason it's so good is because its CTK at long range is still 864. It doesn't drop off. So this is going to be one of the fastest killing assault rifles at long range, and that makes it amazing. But I wouldn't really suggest using this thing on Rebirth or Fortune's Keep because of that close range TTK, and it's definitely more of a Caldera weapon. Now, one thing I would say that makes it a little bit more challenging than some of the other weapons on this list is it will have slightly more recoil. It's one of those slower firing, heavy hitting assault rifles, but I still think it's really manageable if you're average skill or better. And this thing has a faster TTK than any weapon I've given you on this list, or anyone I will give you in the next 3. They're just going to be a little bit easier to use. Now, one other problem with this is going to be the ADS time, but we have great damage per mag, which will actually allow us to make a change on the attachments, which let's hop into those right now. The one change I can make is using the 45 round mag instead of the 55 round one, which won't actually lower our aim down sight speed, which makes this thing feel way better, and it's still going to be great in trios. If you're playing quads, I would say you would have to sacrifice the ADS speed for the 55 round mag, but then everything else is going to be your typical Cold War assault rifle setup: agency, task force, axial, and field agent grip. And then just give this thing a go if you're an average or better player. And number 3 is the KGM40. This thing, I considered giving it number 1, but because of the nerfs in the Season 4 Reloaded update, I dropped it just down a couple spots, and I'm going to tell you why. So they did nerf a couple attachments where it doesn't give us as much horizontal recoil, so it will kick to the right a little bit more, but it still isn't very substantial, and the vertical recoil is almost non-existent, so it's still very low recoil, very easy to use at long range. And then we're going to have a bullet velocity of nearly 1600 meters per second, meaning it's basically hit scan at 100 meters. This thing is amazing for Caldera. And one thing you probably noticed is they did lower the damage by 1 at long range on chest shots, which would actually lower our time to kill from 930 milliseconds to 1030. All we have to do is put on the perk Vital, and we'll go back to that 930 millisecond TTK. And we only have to hit 2 chest shots to achieve that TTK, where the other 9 could be hitting the stomach, the left knee, the right knee, the elbow. You'll still be getting the 930 millisecond TTK. So it's going to be very consistent, very low recoil, and the only thing we had to do to keep this thing being a meta assault rifle is change like 2 attachments on it. And let's just hop into those right now. You already know we switched to Vital from tight grip, which will make the accuracy slightly worse, and then the extra horizontal recoil, how I'm counteracting that is by switching to the strife angled from the hand stop, which is going to give us an extra 4% of horizontal recoil control. And then everything else to get the max bullet velocity to be about 1600 is the MX, Reisdorf, 60 round Clouser, and lengthened. That's going to make it amazing. And since this thing has no visual recoil, the SVT 3-6 is perfect. The 6x zoom on this weapon, a match made in heaven. And then we go with the VDD padded because this is actually going to help our movement speed and our recoil control, which is just a really weird combination, but it makes the weapon feel so much better. You don't feel quite like a slug when you throw on the padded stock. And then one other thing I'd actually change is fully loaded to on hand, because this actually will improve our ADS speed and make the weapon feel a lot better. The only problem is when you're getting your class, you won't immediately get 210 bullets, but I think on hand is worth it because the ADS speed is a little bit slow with switching to the strife angled, and this completely counters that to make it going back to average. Number 2, the Cold War AK-47. This thing has been around in the meta for as long as I can remember, but it did fall off a bit with some of the no recoil weapons that were from Vanguard, but since they nerfed a lot of those attachments, the AK can come straight back into the fold. It's going to have a 900 millisecond TTK at long range, which is still amazing. Really, the only part of this weapon that got worse was the up close TTK, which is why it isn't really a great sniper support anymore. But as a long range assault rifle, it is going to be very forgiving because you got consistent damage. The chest shot damage will be the same as the stomach, the left thigh, the left shin, the left toe. So that means no matter where you're hitting on the body, you're still going to be getting that 900 millisecond TTK. It's still going to have a little bit more recoil than guns like the M13, but we're going to have a better time to kill, less shots to kill, better damage per mag, and better mobility. So this thing is kind of an all-around weapon that still performs really well, and I definitely suggest you guys give it a try again if you haven't used it recently. The attachments are going to be exactly what you think they'd be for a Cold War assault rifle: Grau, Spetsnaz RPK barrel, axial arm Spetsnaz grip, and then the 45 round mag is just for the better aim down sight speed. But if we're in quads or trios, I'd switch it up to the Bakelite 60 round. And for the mode y'all been waiting for, the number 1 assault rifle in Warzone right now is going to be the STG-44. This isn't going to be the way you're accustomed to using it though. I already have an entire video on why the 60 round mag is better than the 50 round. We're going to have a better TTK, damage per mag, and equivalent recoil. And that all comes down to how you set up the weapon. You're probably already going to notice that the optic is different than what most people use, and that's going to help the recoil for sure. We'll get into the rest of the setup in a second. First, I'm going to go over why this is above the AK when we have exactly the same time to kill at 900 milliseconds, and that's going to be because it just has less recoil. It's going to be easier to use and more accessible to more players, and we have a great bullet velocity at 1465 meters per second, making it feel hit scan out to 80, 90, 100 meters. You don't have to lead your shots as much, making it easier to use. Why the STG is better is because it has less recoil. Why you could argue the Cold War AK-47 is better is because it doesn't have a damage drop off from chest to stomach, meaning it doesn't matter where you hit on the body. So that's really a preference base there, and I'm going to go into the class setup, and I'll have the video linked at the end. But just try this setup before you go. There's no way the 60 round mag's better. I'm sure you're going to love it. And then to get the bullet velocity on this weapon, we're going to go with the MX Silencer VDD 760mm barrel and lengthened. But the one thing that got nerfed was this VDD barrel, and this actually going to give us less horizontal recoil control than before, but then they also nerfed the other barrel for accuracy, so there's really no way you can get around that fact, which is why we're going to do a couple things to help it out a little bit more. So first, you've already heard about the 1229 Slate 325 times custom. This is going to give us an extra 4% recoil control over the SVT 3-6, as well as 4% visual recoil. So that's going to make the weapon way more accurate and feel better. Then we go with the VDD weighted stock, which is also just flinch resistance, recoil control, aiming stability, just all things to make the weapon feel better when you're shooting it. Then we go with focus because flinch resistance is so key. When you're in the middle of the fight and someone shoots you and knocks your gun off target, it's going to make you lose a lot of fights. But with this, your weapon isn't going to be knocked off target and you're still going to be hitting your shots, and it's going to make you win a lot of engagements. Then we got hatch that helps us with our horizontal and vertical. And then we got carver foregrip because this is going to help us more than hand stop. But if you really want to help your horizontal recoil a bit more, you could switch to the strife angled, and I honestly haven't had any problems with it, but if you think the horizontal is a little bit too much, just switch it to the strife angle. Now, I hope that's helped you understand what the long range meta for assault rifles is in Warzone, and you try out some of these classes and let me know which one is your favorite. So I'm going to link the SGG video on screen right here so you can see a lot more in depth about why the 60R mag is better than the 50. I'm going to go a lot more in depth with the stats, and then I'm also going to link a video on SMG so you know what the meta is there. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.